My Life is a new sci-fi film directed by Claire Denis. It came out in limited release in theaters a few weeks ago, I think. This is a film that stars Robert Pattinson, or Robert Pattinson as I affectionately call him, Mia Goth, Juliette Binoche, and Andre 3000. I haven't seen Andre 3000 in a lot of movies lately. Yeah, I miss that guy. This film tells the story about a group of convicts and death row inmates that are sent on a mission to space. They live in this space station in space, and their mission is to basically venture towards a black hole so that they can discover new means of life for Earth, which apparently is dying, some kind of environmental disaster. While they're up there in space, human impulses take over. A lot of really weird shit starts happening among the crewmates. Thus, we have a really weird tangled web of a movie that is really hard to describe and explain, but I will do my best here without spoiling. If I had to label this movie anything, I would probably have to just use the word bizarre. Bizarre is like the only word I can think of to describe this thing. Weird, trippy-ass movie with a lot of beautiful imagery and cinematography. Some things that make sense and some things that don't make sense, and some things that you'll be able to follow, and some things that'll leave you scratching your head by the end of the movie. And after watching this movie, I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of things that were teeming in my subconscious about this thing, and I had to talk about it on video with you guys. Again, no spoilers. I'm going to start off with the easy stuff to talk about first, and then I'm going to try to work my way forwards through this weird mess of a movie. Mess is a relative term. I don't literally mean that the movie is a mess. I just mean that the way that it's cobbled together, the beauty of it, sometimes is a little bit messy. I think the performances all across the board are fantastic. Every single actor in this movie does a tremendous job. Robert Pattinson, again, Robert Pattinson as I like calling him. I like calling him that because I wouldn't mind seeing him be the new Batman. One reason, because I think it would cause the internet to fold in on itself and explode, and I think that would be really entertaining. The other part of it, though, is that Robert Pattinson, despite his reputation from the Twilight movies, is actually a pretty underrated actor. He's actually turned in a lot of really solid performances in the last few years, and this movie is no exception. He gives a tremendous performance in this one. In fact, it's one of the best performances I've ever seen from him. His performance in this film is so restrained. It's so held back. He's doing one of those performances where he's not trying to oversell you. He's not trying to make you think that he's some great Oscar-worthy actor, but that in and of itself is a small part of the reason why his performance is so spectacular. He's really able to sell you on this character, this very haunted, quiet, reserved character, and he's able to do it without trying to go overboard or without trying to oversell you. That's what made it a great performance. The other performances in the movie were terrific. Mia Goth plays a very disturbed inmate on this space station. She's just a weird cookie, I'll say that. Juliette Binoche also gives a really good performance. She plays a doctor who is managing the inmates on this space station. She's a very weird individual. I feel like I'm going to use that word weird, odd, strange to describe almost everything about this movie. There are a lot of things that this movie is trying to accomplish that have nothing to do with the actual space mission itself. A lot of underwoven and darker themes in this movie about human nature, about human savagery, about some of the darker impulses of the human soul. There are also a lot of other things in this movie that have to do with parenthood, that have to do with creation of life, and that have to do with society in general. And I really feel like this movie tackled them in a very subtle, very quiet way. A lot of it is not like beating you over the head with it. A lot of it is not ham-fisted. A lot of it is not heavy-handed. A lot of it is just very quietly and subtly woven into the narrative. And I appreciated the fact that this movie was able to be deep without seeming like it's being deep. You know what is deep and beautiful and gorgeous with this movie? The cinematography. We gotta talk about that shit. The cinematography in this movie is amazing. It's one of the best shot and best looking movies of the year for me. This is a film that does a really interesting thing with the lighting and the colors in this movie, and it does everything it does from a cinematography standpoint in order to create a more intimate experience. When it comes to these actors and when it comes to these characters, this is a movie that definitely doesn't shy away from the human part of the human experience. The way they portray space, the way they portray black holes in this movie, it's all really gorgeous to look at stuff. It also goes for the set design of the ship, and that also goes for some of the imagery that is interwoven throughout this movie. It's just one of those things where it's a movie, it's hard to take your eyes off of it once you've seen it. Another thing that grabs your attention about this movie is the musical score. Like, when I first started hearing it in the movie, it's one of those things that kind of sneaks up on you. I didn't really expect the musical score to be that good. It's just one of those things that just stayed with me for the rest of the movie. The editing is one of those film snob things that I like to point out in reviews that some people don't pay attention to, but editing is a thing where if it's really bad, you'll notice. Like, you'll be able to tell that it has really bad editing, and here, the editing is so perfect, it's so sublime. There are a lot of really interesting flashes and cuts and edits of these scenes, and it all serves to make your slow burn a little bit more interesting to watch. You know, I did really enjoy the filmmaking on display in this movie. I think Claire Denis did a great job. That does not mean the movie did not have some things that I did not like about it that brought the movie down a bit. as per usual. This movie does rely a little bit too much on narration and exposition, and sometimes it's an interesting thing where you get to have some insights into a character's head. You get to see their inner monologue and see what they're thinking. And there are other times in this movie where I just feel like it was a little bit over the top. It was a little bit heavy-handed. There are some moments where there's narration where there didn't need to be narration, and there are some moments where I feel like the film does try to hold your hand through certain things. Because of the way that the story is structured, by the end of the movie, you feel like it just ends. Like it ends really abruptly. There's no real build up to it. It just kind of ends. And I was just kind of like, oh, that's it? My bigger issue with this movie are there are some scenes that are in this movie that are hard to watch. And that's not really a problem with the movie itself, but it does affect the rewatchability of this movie. Not just that it's a slow burn or whatever and that it takes its time getting into a story and revealing things to you. Like, I can deal with all of that. Add to that fact that there's some really grotesque and disturbing imagery in this film. There are some shots and some scenes that just make me uncomfortable to watch as a fan of watching movies. Because of all that, I do think that that might affect my rewatchability for this movie, and I do think that lowers it down a few pegs. I wanted to say that I love this movie 3,000, but I can't quite get myself there. I mean, I could probably go like 2,000, maybe 2,500. And High Life was a really great time at the movies. Excellent filmmaking. I'm going to put it in the Silver Age for Man of Steel. So tell me, of all the sci-fi films that you've seen this year, what is your favorite one? Put that in the comment section below. Like and subscribe to the Superfan Show, and as always, if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.